let's find out whether these things are non-human intelligence or not, because this is dangerous. What we're looking at, if it's the behavior of an intelligence, we're not in a good situation. And we need all the best minds we can get to step forward on that.
Welcome. I am here with Ted Rowe. Ted Rowe has extensive experience in aviation reporting of UAPs. This is from his LinkedIn profile. I'd like to read it. Sorry, hopefully you're not embarrassed sitting there, Ted, but this is pretty amazing stuff. He says, motivated by my own experiences and curiosities, I have been designing, administrating, and managing UAP research teams and conducting research into UAP and aviation safety for over 2 decades. This has been a terrific learning experience. I've had a leading role in everything from business management, administrating for scientific research and publishing, website and internet management, data and project security, media and social activities, international and government outreach and collaboration, and more. Our program at narcap.org resolved in 2000 that UAP are a hazard to aviation. This is in 2000, right? And Ted spent 20 years trying to convince the US government to care. That has changed recently. The release of the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, ODNI, report in June 2021 brought with it a sense of relief and validation. Has been magnified by the opportunity to stand up the new UAP safety, aviation safety program at the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, the premier aeronautical sciences and engineering professional society in the world. I just talked with Ryan Graves 2 weeks ago about that and his new program as well. Ted also continues, I've had direct close exposures to UAP, both before and since I became an active researcher and advocate, and they inform my activities in this field. I'm personally familiar with the psychology and sociological effects of UAP exposures.
I want to put a plug in here for our chief scientist. Dr. Richard Haynes founded Narcap, and I supported him. I was his executive director, co-founder, and he is a former research scientist at Ames Research Center, perceptual psychologist, very long history of looking at aviation and UAP cases predating Narcap back to the 60s. So in that case, he'd acquired about 3,400 observations and incidents involving UAP that he compiled in a catalog called AirCat. And then when we started Narcap, we were working with two kinds of cases. We were working with anecdotal cases that were historical and non-actionable. And there's a 2-week window after an incident occurs that you can go to the app and get audio recording, radar hard copy. And so that actionable cases are pretty rare. By the time they get to us, we don't have time to put in a FOIA to get that information out. So yeah, that's Dr. Haynes. And he was our chief scientist for 15 years and my mentor. With him and Dr. Valee and Dr. Heisch, and Jim McCampbell, Dr. McCampbell, and others, they were really the guiding hands with Narcap that helped us stay focused on the issue, which was UAP and aviation safety, not resolving what UAP are, not trying to figure out where they come from or who's driving them or anything, just to focus on that interaction between aviator and the unknown. And by doing that and staying focused on that, I was able to move through all of the nonsense and the whatever you want to call it, that ufology is, and we stay focused on that. If you couldn't speak about this 20 years ago, you'd get laughed out of the room. That's why we came up with the term UAP. And I don't know if you know that, Chris, but that's Dr. Haynes. He coined that term and defined it as a proper noun, unidentified air capital acronym.
Yeah, I do remember seeing it. And I remember seeing several interviews with Dick Haynes. I was really impressed by his interviews. That's too bad he's not here anymore. But you've taken it on. Like you said, he was your mentor. Is that how you got into this? Can you just quickly explain for people that aren't aware what Narcap is?
Narcap is the National Aviation Reporting Center on Anomalous Phenomena. And our focus primarily is to investigate aviation incidents involving safety factors and unidentified aerial phenomena. That's all we've done. All of our cases involve aviation safety factors. All of our inquiries are safety oriented.
Is it all from pilots?
Pilots, air traffic controllers, occasionally ground observers. We have a case in our technical reports under research that I think it's technical report 12, that was a group of astronomers who, under technical reports on the left pulled out. There you go. Oh, there you go. Technical reports. And then I believe it's technical report Small analysis of, yeah, that's it right there.
Small
Technical.
white ball of light flies
Yeah.
near airliner.
Yes. In this case,
Cool. So you
Dr.
can, yeah, all of these are your reports.
Yeah, they're all Narcap technical
So
reports.
2000. Oh, cool. So back from 2000, all these, let's
That,
see, aviation safety in America, results of an informal Narcap advisory survey, 57 pilot sighting reports. Cool. I mean, it's okay. And then you had, this is from the one you mentioned is from 2005.
yeah, and I think we did the work in '07, but that one is a series of photographs taken by astronomers who had come out at night, and they were just in the flight path of the landing path at San Jose. And so an airliner came over and there was a ball of light following it, and then it pulled up under the tail and held position, and then it broke away. And they shot a series of photographs of it. Air crew weren't even aware it was there.
Okay, I think I've seen that. Is that the photo you have on your one of your profiles?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think I remember. Yeah, I
I
noticed that.
zoomed in on it to just show the thing under the tail.
Yeah, it's the next page here. Let's check it out.
So the ball of light's following the airliner. It's way back there, and then it pulls up under the tail of the aircraft and paces it,
Oh,
and then it
cool. Yeah, you
and
can
then
see it.
and then it breaks away. It's not an astronomical phenomenon. It's not a star. It is what it is.
It looks like a Gorman kind of UAP, the white ball. Eric Delgado, he
Yeah,
filmed an orb. It
I
was
did a
at
study
night.
on that. I did a study on that case. It's at the top of the technical reports list as well.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, he mentioned he had some excellent investigation.
It's it, it's case 20. It's at the very top.
Oh, 20. Okay. Excellent. Oh yeah, there we go.
And this was an interesting case because Eric had his camera out, and he not only filmed the UAP and talked about it while he was doing it, he turned his camera on his house monitor display. And there was some question that it might have been Venus. And Venus was in that general area. It was on that side of the plane and low. But if you look at the weather radar on his display, there are clouds between him and the horizon. So I think Venus is disqualified out of that.
So
So
I
he's
guess, is
fine.
there any contender for what that could be? Any mundane explanation?
No, not at this point. I don't believe it was another aircraft. He didn't either. The way they said it approached, this is the thing about investigations. If you're going to talk about the anecdotes, you can't cherry pick. You have to accept the whole explanation as they said it, and then you need to work out the physics of it in the environment. And then you'll see perhaps there was an illusion or a misperception, and that will stand up. Otherwise, you have to go what they say. And what Mr. Delgado said and his co-pilot acknowledged in the video was that it came from above and it dropped to their level. There was a scanning light that ran down the side of their aircraft, and then it paced their aircraft. It matched and drifted back a little bit. So it was a little bit behind them and stayed with them parallel. He estimated under 2,000 feet, not quite 1,000-foot limit there, but close enough. And my concern with these things is that they're highly mobile and unpredictable. And so my advice is very conservative to pilots and air crews that put it behind you and explain why you deviated from course when you get in. Don't stay next to them when they're that way. They have this thing about ping ponging around, and whether or not they actually hit your plane isn't really the issue. It's what you do in response to what you think is happening. So now we have a little problem here because the camera is focusing on the windscreen and then on the light. So it's going back and forth. That's why you'll hear Delgado talking about pulsating. It's not, the light is steady. It's not pulsating.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of comments saying they think it's autofocus.
Yeah.
It's the autofocus on the Galaxy camera.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's going to the windscreen and then it's going beyond and then back to the windscreen.
Because right there, it's not going. It's not.
It's
Okay,
that,
now it's going back to changing size.
yeah,
Yeah,
when it's
you're
focused and not fuzzy, then it's the clear shot of the UAP.
because he said it was just solid there, just right in formation.
Stuck right with him 35 minutes about. And then before he crossed the border, it broke away to the left, westbound. He was at, I think, FL 37, and on a pretty much northerly track heading to over Mexico, hauling freight. It was just him and his co-pilot.
Any others that you or memorable UAP cases that you've encountered?
One of the really good ones turned out not to be UAP, and that I learned some things out of that. I got a case. We don't normally do international cases, but I got a contact from an Indian pilot flying for Ryanair. And he was flying a 737-800 out southbound from France into Spain, and he got his camera out. Something had flashed in front of them, and there was a contrail above it. The his captain, the left-hand seat, was freaking out. He was white knuckling it. He thought he was dealing with a surface to air missile and was just, you could hear him just ranting in Slovenian. And so the thing comes in and they take him, he starts getting video of it, and then it turns around over them and goes back. And I'm thinking, what, because the object itself is sheathed in plasma. If I'm pretty sure it's technical. It doesn't look like it's a rock. It's not behaving like a rock. And, but I start looking and there'd been a Starlink launch. Now, I wasn't sure at the time, so I went ahead and I put the case out on the Narcap site, and that wonderful ufology peer review kicked in moment. People were coming back to me with, "Hey, that's the second stage of a Falcon booster." And I'm like, okay, got a referral, and they were like, "Jim over." And I was, okay, I'll go take a look. And by golly, he was right. And so I withdrew it and gave a referral to Jim on that and to the air crew. But it really points to the idea that we have a changing environment up there. There are a lot of things flying around out there and a lot of things being tested, and drones of every kind and new spacecraft and new profiles of activities as well. So all of that is being thrown into the mix with UAP. And so we have to become more discerning, more careful if we're going to continue with case analysis. And I don't think we need to do a lot more of that, in my opinion.
So it's all we can get is videos of these orbs or lights or something. What are we doing wrong?
The best evidence is multiple sensor. It's sure it's visual evidence, but it's also sensor based, EM, heat, infrared, all of that. Everything that we can bring to bear on them, because they do operate on the fringes of our perception and our ability to detect. They're anomalous in our environment, and their behaviors are anomalous to our understanding of our physical environment. So knowing that, we have to broaden our detection strategies in order to see them and to really get a grip on what they're about, how they do what they do. And so in the camp that we do have definitive data already, and it's really a matter of scaling down classification, working our relationships with government to gain access to those things. Your scientists and engineers, we want your best. Step up. Let's find out whether these things are non-human intelligence or not, because this is dangerous. What we're looking at, if it's the behavior of an intelligence, we're not in a good situation. And we need all the best minds we can get to step forward on that. And then I sat back, I looked at my group. I remember I was asking Ravi, I said, Ravi, if it's a non-human intelligence, they're probably excellent nanotechnologists, right? Oh, yes. Yeah. And I said, and biomolecular engineers. Oh, yeah. I said, so what do you suppose their capacity is for surveillance and social engineering? And it just hadn't gone that far in his head. And and I started thinking about all of our engineers and all the people that are coming on board. When they get past the how these things happen and start dealing with the why, who's there for them? I will say that the pattern is sufficient among psychologists, is that the pattern is about people with dissociative disorders. Everybody else goes into denial in another way, or doesn't end up in therapy and doesn't become a statistic that supports that contention. But we did have a conversation recently in the group about how the stress of these things can cause
The issues. Well, the PTSD. The stories you hear, I would imagine that they would have some mental issues. I've been involved in just basically just one kind of case. I wasn't even there. It was in another country, but I was just helping along. And the stories you hear, and it goes through generations. You're talking the grandma, the mom, and the daughter all have
Mhm.
kind of these serious issues. And, you know, that would affect your life, I think. That would affect your give you PTSD if I was in
I've
your
had
shoes.
I've had more than one experiencer come to me and tell me they've been tying themselves to their furniture or their spouse at night. Well, that's profound. That's deep. Something's wrong. And I had one kind of touching story. A woman called me up one morning out here whispering into the phone, "My husband's gone. I can only talk for a minute. I'm 73 years old. In 1972, I woke up half naked in the backyard under a flying saucer and tied myself every night afterwards because my husband worked at night, tied myself to the furniture between my kids' beds. And my family's made my life a living hell ever since.
Mm.
She's the butt of all the jokes in the family. And in the middle of all this, my husband's coming home and she hangs up. This is not good. And there's a lot of this out there. And it's stigma. It's the direct result of whatever left turns we took in the 50s and 60s that made this a forbidden subject. First thing was your own instincts. You know, you can stand there and look at them and say, geez, is this baloney or is this real? Are they performing for me? Versus, or because some people want to impress you, they just want to be part of the conversation. And so they literally start percolating stuff up and you can see it. You can see it. What's more interesting to me is how seriously they take it. Are they frightened? Am I getting indicators from them that they're trying to talk about something they don't want to talk about, that they're struggling with it? But generally speaking, credibility involves people who are not looking for attention, people that are sincere and are not trying to capitalize on their experience. They're not running out and broadcasting to everybody that they've seen this stuff. Chances are they're sensitive to their careers and they don't want that information floating around out there. I have a lot of respect for pilots when they come to me because they have something to lose. And there's every chance that they will be penalized for talking about their incident with their managers or even with the guy in the seat next to them.
Is it a problem if people want to remain anonymous? Does that
No,
set up any red flags or anything in your brain? Or
no, it's par for the course. In fact, if they want to be anonymous, it's hard for them to capitalize on the case, isn't it?
yes,
So that anonymity is actually part of assessing their character. It isn't a disqualifier if they aren't going to be anonymous, but it's another indicator that you're dealing with a serious person who wants to talk seriously about something they've seen. So again, we've come from a place where we're dealing with anecdote and we're starting to move to instruments. And with that, and some of those instruments are simple, they're cameras, but eventually there's going to be more than that moving around out there. At Narcap, we have over 100 years pilot cases. Our
100
earliest pilot,
years.
yeah, our earliest pilot case is 1916. And if you look at our technical report 4 on our website, there's a catalog of those cases. One of my favorites is, I think it was 1924. It was a DH-4 mail plane, biplane mail hauler case. Yeah, 4, that catalog. And that's a catalog of aviation sightings from 1916 to 2000. It was put together by a member of Dominic Weinstein, who was a member of the GPAN College of Experts with CNES's group in France. And he compiled this catalog. We published it. And so in 1985, David Hastings is flying over Nevada, almost hit a giant cylinder, and then makes a circuit and photographs it. And that's the David Hastings photograph from 1985. And that's 3 years before Photoshop. Here's a trend in the data. And I mentioned this in my presentation to the AIAA is that there are 4 common observations by pilots: balls of light, spheres, cylinders, and disks. And then occasionally there are other geometrical forms. There's triangles, chevrons, parallelograms like diamonds or squares or rectangles, but those are outlier. The primary ones are those. And of all of the safety cases, I did an analysis of 100 aviation safety cases, and 44 of them involved balls of light. And all of the EM cases involving concurrent effects on magnetic systems, on electromagnetic effects on aviation systems involve balls of light.
I remember that. Yeah, I had actually scripted a video, particularly on that one point. Anytime the avionics were interfered with, it seemed a ball of light was involved. Is that
That's
correct?
right. And if you think about it, okay, a ball of light now, if it's masking an object or something object and it's generating RF and it's ionizing around it, right? So you've got the sheath of light around it. You can in order to create that sheath, it has to emit, and that emission can have effects on microsystems on the aircraft. There's a famous old story involving Neil Daniels, Captain Daniels, and he was flying high altitude at night, had a very large white ball of light take a position off his wingtip, and his autopilot started banking the plane. So alternating magnetic field, maybe something along those lines. So if you think of the aircraft as a sensing device, what's influenced can tell you what the influence was. So these are all ways that we've had to do mental gymnastics rather than just bring science in and look up and start collecting data like they do with every other phenomenon.
Yes. What do you think? In your opinion, what is the most important question that needs to be answered about the UFO phenomenon? I guess in particular about the cases we're talking about. What are you most interested to find out about these cases?
I want to find out how to detect them, either airborne, ground-based, or spaceborne, or all three. I want to figure out how to see them in our environment and know when they're here. And I want to know whether or not they represent non-human technology. And I want that answer real quick. Because that one, we need to organize globally around this subject if we have indicators that's the case. This is like Ebola. If you have an Ebola outbreak, you really don't have a right to keep it to yourself as a nation. You need to share it with the world, particularly if you have aviation hubs. It You can't sit on pandemic information. You have to share it. And this is the same kind of thing. These aviation cases happen everywhere where humans fly airplanes. We have them in all 7 ICAO regions, the International Civil Aviation Organization, which is the UN governing body of FAAs across the world, has divided the world into 7 regions. And UAP cases happen in all of those regions. They happen at all altitudes. They happen in any weather, all phases of flight. So truly they are a safety issue, yes, and the phenomenon is global. And if we suspect it involves non-human intelligence, we need to get to the bottom of that PDQ and then get the world on a different footing to understand this and deal with it, because it doesn't look to me like if it involves a non-human intelligence, and that's just scrapping my own personal experiences and staying objective in the guardrails of the science and engineering that I represent. If it does represent non-human intelligence, we have to do something about it. And we, it can't be a secret.
I guess Mick West has argued on Twitter that there hasn't been an actual aviation accident from a UAP. Is that really the case?
No, I don't believe that's the case at all. And look, first off, there's a couple of ways you can have an accident. One is you can be hit by them. And we have pilots who claim that their aircraft have been hit. We've got newspaper clippings of it. A lot of it's pre-NTSB.
Yep.
So
NTSB is the National
National
Safety
Transport
Investigation Board, National Transportation Safety Board.
Safe, they do all the investigations on all crashes and aviation incidents. And
Yeah, they're trained out of the safety center. I remember they were basically highly trained. There's not that many crashes actually. The commercial airline industry is amazingly safe
very
for
rare.
pretty much anything.
Yeah.
So they have a pretty experienced team though, a small team I think that goes out and does it. But those guys, from my just impression, is they're very good.
Yeah, they're very good and they're very serious. And keep in mind, the FAA told pilots not to report any incidents involving UFOs. So NTSB didn't get any of those incidents. Okay. And then it hasn't existed throughout the history of powered flight. I've got newspaper clippings of pilots saying they've been hit by UFOs. And we also have the issue of the other way an accident can occur. And that's the perception of the pilot that he needs to put in a control input and having a disaster occur
Hmm.
in that process that it goes catastrophic on.
Yeah, you mentioned all phases of flight. If it's in one of the critical phases of flight, that could cause issues.
Landing, takeoff. For example, that 100 years of cases I mentioned, you'll see the thread of reports stay the same. They're disks, spheres, cylinders, and balls of light, even while our aircraft are going from paper and plywood and wire to titanium and digital systems. And then we evolved. The UAP stayed the same and the report stayed the same. And then the next question is, have pilots ever discovered anything new and accurately described it? And yes, they have. And science ignored them for decades. Pilots talked about lightning leaving the tops of clouds into space and were poo-pooed. Oh, doesn't happen. Science didn't touch it. For decades, they said that. But a couple of atmospheric physicists collected pilot anecdotes and then started looking, and they found them. Sprites, jets, dwarves, the whole menagerie of high altitude electrical phenomena. And these things are quite prominent when a lot of times when the pilots see these things, they're amazingly big. And so here they are trying to tell science, and science go talk to the hand, and they were right. So here they are, their descriptions were accurate. It led to new science, and they weren't BSing us, and the stories had endured over time. Then we got the same situation with UAP. Same types of same types of descriptions, endures over time, and science doesn't believe them until now. Apparently, at least scientists have the sanction to turn and look, and that's why we chose the UAP term at Narcap, because UFO would get us laughed out of the room. But if we said UAP, yeah, that's different. We can talk about that.
We can talk about
Human,
UAPs.
humans
It's
are
funny,
funny.
right?
Yeah,
It seems like UFO is getting a little bit softer. I don't know. It seems like the stigma is breaking down, like you
it is.
mentioned in your LinkedIn profile there about the 2021. So, has anything changed? Have you seen a lot of things change since then? Are you getting more reporting, more optimistic?
It's showing in a couple of levels. I'm getting more reporting. I'm getting more attention, which wasn't something that I ever thought. I've never been in this looking for followers or anything. I've rejected Ancient Aliens and some of the other UFO-tainment. I don't do a lot of conferences, just every now and then. More as favors, really. But so I'm
Same
getting
here.
attention.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's great. But the stigma seems to be lifting. I'm getting more reports. A lot of them are resolving. They turn out to be Starlink satellites and this kind of stuff, which is pretty common with us. We rarely get actionable cases, just every once a year, maybe. That's something we can actually go get data on and ask questions about. The inquiries are increasing. My LinkedIn account, people are stepping up. I'm getting a lot of credentialed folks coming toward us, looking at what we're doing. The UAP Medical Coalition work we're doing is attracting medical doctors and mental health professionals, and they're starting to step up and ask questions. And we put a huge amount of information on the website to help inform and educate them, and set up a forum so that they could get in there and talk to experiencers if they wanted. I had a paper approved. I'm a co-author of a paper with recommendations for improving reporting and data management. And so we have some advisements that we want to offer on that process to move it all towards one central place where it can be studied. If the cases keep ending up in MUFON and Newfork and other places, then at NARCAP, and they're not getting to FA and not getting to the government, then we're not actually getting the kind of traction that we should get out of having the cases. A lot of the egos involved with all of this are probably the hardest part to overcome. And I'm ready to shut down NARCAP tomorrow if it's going to improve the situation. I have no problem with that, none whatsoever. The right thing to do. And that transcends my organization or my ego or anything that I want attention wise. We need to address this. And anything I can help to make that happen, I'll do it. But a lot of the folks involved in all of this are a little more turf oriented and a little more interested in their business card than they are with a potential threat to humanity. And I'm just not going to be part of that. Won't. I'm not on the stage at Ancient Aliens. In fact, they contacted me and wanted to do a show about Narcap, and they had to do it without me because I wouldn't agree to it.
Yeah, just their style or how they present it.
I can't be seen next to the people that they bring in. I don't want to be seen to be endorsing or being any part of things I don't agree with.
Yeah.
I work damn hard for the reputation I have, and I'm not giving it up to anybody. The best thing you can do as a scientist is be independent and neutral. And if you have collaborations, make sure they're very clearly defined. Otherwise, stand on your own. And I'm not a professional scientist. I am not academically trained. I don't call myself a scientist. I'm a science administrator. You could call it a nerd herder. I understand the parameters of the situation. And as a chess player, I look at my best pieces and move them around the board and towards our best interests as pilots, as human beings. So I'd like to see a lot more of that going on in ufology. But man, when you look around, how many people have moved up out of ufology into the mainstream? I'm like one of them, and there's not hardly any
Yeah.
of them.
There's not
So
many.
no, and that should be indicative too of the quality of work over the last 70 years. We'll grumble.
What's the fun one? What's the most surprising or unexpected thing you've learned about UAPs? Or it's in your life, doesn't need to be since joining Narcap.
The ubiquitous nature of UAP.
How ubiquitous it is.
Yes. And this was the suspicion mentioned in the NTRB slides by Arrow as well, that due to the potentially ubiquitous nature of UAP, meaning they're everywhere. And you talk to the guys who were flying out over Whiskey 72 or north there on 112, they ran into these things daily. And when they deployed, they ran into them where they deployed. So it's sobering just to see how often it happens and how global the phenomena is.
So I've been doing an investigation with Ross Coulthart. I got a video here. I'll share it in a second from he doesn't want to be public, anonymous guy from Australia. Let's see. And he says he's autistic. He doesn't like crowds and he doesn't want to talk to anyone about this. He wants to remain totally anonymous, but I verified him. I basically checked out his identification. We did a background check on him in Australia. And then Ross Coulthart did a full interview with him, as well as me and Danny interviewed him. And it sounds legitimate. So now we're just trying to verify the video, get your take on it and see what you think. It's only a minute here. He said he's out in the Australian outback, out in the middle of nowhere. He's laying in a beach chair on a camping trip. And he's just sitting there and he sees this red light above him up high. He's, what is that thing? And he has a friend with him. He calls out. They're not awake, actually. They're just in the tent, passed out. It's late. And he says it starts coming down. So the colors start coming down. He grabs his phone. I guess he was probably looking at it. And he films it basically like this. He's filming it straight up. So let's play it. You hear it?
Yeah. Uh-huh. Well, that's really helpful.
Really? Good.
Yeah.
Ross said he's legit. He said right here it was a white light, like a spotlight on him, or it
Oh,
illuminated everything white. He didn't see red like you see there. That's it. He also said he could read. There was writing basically here around this inner ring. He said it was some crazy looking writing. He couldn't read it, but it was like angular writing. Said it was just a metallic looking
so it's
craft.
basically it's a disc inside of a sphere of light. Is that what I'm saying here? Or is that whole thing a disc?
This whole thing is a disc. You see here. He said it. He couldn't tell how big it was at the beginning, but then when it comes down above him, he
Okay.
said it was very big. He
Yeah.
said at least 10 meters across is what he said.
Sounds
Uh,
right.
he said
30
10.
feet.
He said
Tall.
10 to 30 meters. Is that what he said? He couldn't tell because he said 10 to 30 meters.
If you didn't know how far away it was, that's fair. 30 meters or 10 meters is pretty common. 30-foot discs are just everywhere but I've seen them bigger. Oh, I think that's pretty good. Part of the problem is that the camera interprets color. So you're not getting necessarily the truth of the color when you look at this, like he was saying. But the colors that I'm seeing are emission spectra of atmospheric atoms. The green, that's oxygen. The red is neon. The orange is helium. The blue is nitrogen. And that'd be my guess. And it's really common in the literature to see cases involving reports of red and green lights, lights that phase between red and green.
Yeah, he said initially it was red
Yeah,
and
that's
further
pretty good.
away, and then it started basically descending. Because I tried to consider what could it be faked? What is a mundane explanation for this? Could it have been like a laser, color changing laser? Couldn't see how that would work actually. If you point a color, if this was just the end of a laser pointer that could change
Right.
colors. Just trying to think of ways to see if it's fake or not. A laser would point at the sensor. It would flame out the sensor.
I've got somebody that you could share that video with and might have some deep insights for you.
I would love it. Yeah, because basically we haven't shared it. Just wanted to. We verified it as far as we could, me and Danny,
I
and
think you
then
got
we
some.
interviewed him, and then we sent it to Ross just because he's in Australia, and so he did his initial investigation in it, and he said he can't see any reason why he's lying. So it'd be
I
great.
think I think you've got something there. It's worth looking further into. I'll get a referral to you shortly.
Yeah, that'd be great because it seems like I don't remember seeing a better video. If
It's
it's
very intriguing, especially if you're telling me that the outer ring on that is actually the hard edge of a disc.
Yeah, if you look, maybe it's probably hard to see on your little screen there, but and I can't zoom in. But yeah, basically what you have is he says this is the disk on the outside,
Right.
and then there's another little disk in here, and then you have
Interest.
the whatever that
Right.
ball is, that fusion ball thing.
Now, this one that flew over me in Hawaii, it was flat on the bottom. I couldn't see the cupola, the dome on the top because of the flange on the thing was just at the angle and it was just at the altitude where I could see that. But the underside of it looked like white ceramic and it had a black ring just inside of it that 360 around the whole thing. In the center, there was a center point of a black round, I don't know, you could call it a pin, maybe it's a light, I don't know what it is. And then around it were three rounded kind of knobs arranged to equal distance around the bottom of this thing near the center of
Lights.
it. And my guess was, yeah, it was 30 to 60 feet in diameter. These things are out there and people are seeing them.
But how do you
Oh,
see
yeah.
the field evolving?
See it going in a couple of ways. The hard sciences are going to you're going to see a lot more engagement that adheres to standards of scientific research and publication. Then you're going to see the softer sciences, psychology and sociology, anthropology, that kind of thing. They're going to come into it and really dig into the consciousness aspect of this. And it's there. It's almost, if you pardon the pun, almost a universal trait of telepathy amongst people that have encounters with these things that seem to be focused on them.
Is that the same for the aviation related incidents?
I have to wonder. Imagine I spent 10 years thinking about Dr. Haynes and then I see something and he shows up on my doorstep. Something there, there's a machinery there. There's a physics there of some kind. Something's happening. That isn't coincidence. And I think that people who are exposed to these things, I'm less and less convinced that it is coincidental. It wasn't coincidence that I saw that thing on the beach, even though it had nothing to do with me. How else, other than my focus on all of this, would put me directly under one when it goes by? My take on all of this is that we need to be really careful and serious. We have everything to lose here. We have nowhere to go. We could find ourselves, imagine being in an insurgency for centuries while we're trying to find parity and get enough information to be able to push back. And what happens in those centuries in the meantime? And how vulnerable are we as a human society with these crises coming on? How easy is it for somebody from outside to show up and say, "Oh, we've got the answers for you. Just do this." Right. And then goodbye, human society. Goodbye, everything that's good about us. We paid for every advancement in our culture in rivers of blood. We owe no apologies to anybody for who we are and how we got where we are. We know we're flawed. We know there's growth still to come. There's better change and better living to be had. But I don't think that non-human intelligences care about such things. And I don't think that humanity needs to abandon anything just because we're dealing with aliens that might not understand. The issue is our judgment. If you remember that movie Mars Attacks, do you remember that comedy, right?
Yeah.
Mars Attacks. And the Martians come and great flaw of humanity is revealed. We couldn't come to an agreement on how to respond to it while they laid waste. While they showed absolute disregard for everything, we couldn't even come to the point of saying, "Hey, that's bad." The only ones that could were the military generals, and nobody was taking them seriously.
Huh.
And this is the situation we're in right now. We don't have a unified response. We have 195 countries filled with millions of sociopaths running corporations and being elected officials, and none of them have the world's best interest in mind when it comes to dealing with this. And so we're in a very vulnerable place. It could take an awful lot to throw it off if it's not good. So take it seriously. That's my best advice to everybody. I had folks from Galileo Project come to me about hotspots. And I said, they want to know what could happen out there. They said, how strong are your people? They said, what do you mean? I said, if you think you might end up butting up against a non-human intelligence, do you have a team that can do it? Choke, choke. It's not funny. I don't take people out there
Yeah.
generally. I go myself. The last time I took people out there, it damaged all of us. And it's not my only rodeo, but I've been very circumspect about who I spend time around because a lot of folks shouldn't be exposed to it. I lost friends over exposures when they were with me when it happened. And now they're not in my life anymore because I remind them of something that terrifies them, terrifies me. So,
Did you get any, you say it terrifies you. Is that, do you think it's a threat or is it just the unknown?
okay, now I'm switching hats. I'm not AIA guy. I'm not Narcap guy. I'm not UAP med guy. I'm person with UAP exposures. And yes, I absolutely think it's a threat. I have stories about this going back to 5 years old, and no 5-year-old child should be talking about this. If the other team, and I'm pretty sure it's another team, respects us, we wouldn't have 5-year-old children talking about it. And you can talk about everything you want about sociological differences between us and them and misunderstandings and everything else. It's what we think. We don't let people abduct our children and
Yep.
indoctrinate. Okay. And it doesn't matter if it's little gray brother or the Viet Cong, we're not letting them do it. Okay. So that's the issue here. And we have to firm up on that. We can't just come up with excuses for them. Imagine if they're hostile,
Right.
they're banking on that. They're going to use that against us. They have access to everything that goes on the internet every day. Everything I've ever said about it is floating around out there and AIs are sucking it up. But yeah, in my opinion, I don't think it's a good situation. I've seen occupants twice. In one of those situations, it did not have a good outcome for me. And the other one was interesting because they came right up to the car. They were right there in front of me, and the whole side of their device was transparent. So they were just right there, looking at me, looking at them, looking at me. And like I said, that made me sick. That there, that was in the middle of Oakland. There's 8 million people in the Bay Area, and this thing found me. That we saw it from miles away, and it intercepted our car. And in the process, we picked up 3 hours in time, never took an off ramp, never stopped driving. We saw the interior of the device. I know how they operate their machines. I know,
Can you explain it? This is amazing. I'm sure you've done it so many times before, but
not really. You're actually getting fairly rare side of my conversations here. But yeah, a touch screen on the wall between me and them, characters on it. One of them sitting there tapping away on the thing. The other two,
what were the occupant? What were they? What they look?
classic gray types, about 4 or 5 feet tall. They had their hands on a panel, and I could see them all three in silhouette. The interior of the device was lit up bright yellow. I could see the deck they were standing on and the void under the deck. And there was nothing in that thing. There was nothing in it. Okay. Everything that made it able to do was in its construction, in its hull. And that they were operating it bio interface. They had their hands on a panel.
So they were
Uh,
touching it. You hear about telepathy as well.
yeah. Whatever the case is, these guys, it was mind body integration with the system. We do this too with our fighters and so
Yeah.
on. The most interesting aspect was the non inertial effect, because as we watched this thing, we saw it from miles away. It transited to where it was in front of our direction of travel on southbound on 880 heading into Oakland. And we just passed the Bay Bridge interface and we're moving towards Oakland. And the thing is in front of us and it's almost exactly a mile away. I plotted it on Google Maps and it jumped faster than if I'd have been blinking, I wouldn't have seen the movement. It literally leaped and came to a dead stop in front of the car. And because I'm looking at it, my eye couldn't acquire its movement fast enough. So it literally stopped and started 3 times with pop, 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 and stopped right in front of the car and then matched our speed doing 55, going backwards from its original direction of
So
travel.
in front of the car, so you're driving. Are you driving?
No, I was
Okay.
passenger.
So you're the passenger, and right in front of you, this thing just in front of
Yep.
the car is driving
Let
along.
its own length from the windshield and matching the speed of our vehicle. And they didn't even rock on their heels. If you're riding on a bus, right, and they're doing 5 miles an hour and you're standing in the aisle, the guy hits the brakes, you just continue at 5 miles an hour. Right? These guys did not rock on their heels. So they didn't experience inertia. That movement should have killed them. So they're somehow decoupled from the local environment. The local physics is not affecting them. Um,
In
and
3 hours, you said there was 3 hours of time just driving.
well, it started a little before 4:30 in the afternoon, and all of a sudden it got dark, and we got disoriented. And then next thing I know, we're driving past the Oakland police station, which is about a mile, maybe 70 seconds in time. And I turned to Sue and I start rallying. She was driving. My friend Ian was in the back seat. And I say, "What time is it?" She says 7:34. And so 3 hours and 9 minutes or something acceleration Because my guess is that there's an event horizon. You get close to these things and you start being involved with them and their physics and the environment. And when it got away from us, that's when I was able to rally and time became normal again. And we watched this thing watch us until it broke away and headed back over the Oakland Hills. And then it did this maneuver where it had the lights on it. It was over Lake Merritt. And there was a marine layer at about 5,000 feet, which is common for January in the Bay Area. And it was under that, just under the marine layer. And it wrapped the clouds around it in a way that became invisible, except for the lights that were on it that they didn't turn off. And
It
I'm not
wrapped
so
the
sure
clouds. So when you're around it, you could see the clouds
when you looked at it,
around
it
the
was seamless. If the lights hadn't been there, you wouldn't have been able to see it. It literally just became invisible.
Hmm.
Klingons couldn't do it any better. Okay. It was like that. And the only reason we could still see it was because it had these two ginormous white lights underneath it, like Pink Floyd stadium lights, massive.
blasting
So
down. So it didn't look like the normal orbs that you see, like those white orbs, no lights coming out of it.
it was a cylinder and it had two bright white lights situated about a quarter of the way in on each end. And I'm guessing it was 45, 50 feet long. The people who were in the car with me say it was considerably larger.
Hmm.
Okay. So there's variation in we all say we saw the same thing, but there's variation in how big we think it was and when. And there's also variation in when we thought the incident began, which is also intriguing. But we were on the other side of the Bay Bridge heading towards Oakland, is how I remember it.
Somewhat, but the other people remember it differently.
Ear Earlier, or they remember it as happening earlier, closer to El Cerrito.
So how long do you think the total that you remember, how long did it last? Just
Okay,
as you're
okay.
driving? Just that
So
long?
yeah, the stretch of road is a freeway. We're doing 55, and that whole stretch is about 4.5 miles long from where it intercepted us to where it left us. And so I would say
5
5 to
minutes
7
driving?
minutes. Yeah, 5 to 7 minutes total because we saw it before it intercepted us and we saw it after it left us. So you add that another 45 seconds on each end, I would guess. So I would say 5 to 7. Then we picked up 3 hours and something. So temporal effects seem to be part of this. And you hear this all the time. People get close to these things and time changes for them. And I would imagine that when they don't see the object, it's nearby and they're still under its influence. That's part of the temporal issue. Unless they're just flat knocked out and carried off and they don't remember the 3 hours that they were abused, which is another way of looking at it.
Why don't why doesn't anyone believe there's 3 people right there? I don't know. It seems like it should be believable. Even myself, it's until I see it myself, can I really believe it? Really? And
Well,
even
there's
if
a
you do
truth
see
of
it
it.
yourself, everyone tells you you're crazy,
Why do they say that? Because if they agreed with you, then they would have to defend their
and
belief in you,
whole worldview changes.
and they're not gonna
And
do that.
wherever I go, I'm vulnerable. Wherever I'm walking around.
And this is part of the reason people say everybody should know about this, and I say it too. But when I say everybody, I'm talking about defense establishment. I wanna be clear about that. Everybody else might be better that everybody not know it. That the best way to blunt the influence of an invader is not to admit that they're there and to
Mm.
continue being you. That to me, that seems like the smart thing. Protect human culture and human society while you get your defense engaged. And then at some point where you can get a conversation in with the other team, divine their intentions.
Mm.
Otherwise, do intention analysis and take every step you can to protect yourself and learn everything you can about them.
Excellent, Ted. Let me bring Danny here. All right, Danny. This is my assistant, Danny. Let me take you off mute, Danny. Anything we missed? How'd you enjoy the
No,
discussion?
no, no. When we was just speaking about a Michael, you didn't mention about obviously the other two incidents that he had. And do you think, Ted, that autistic people are more susceptible to having experiences?
We've been discussing this at the UAP Medical Coalition. We were talking about this in a meeting on Saturday about what might trigger a person's sensitivity to these types of incidents, because it seems like some people are sensitive to them.
Yeah.
And we made a long list of different things that might involve that. And the autistic spectrum is included on that. So The short answer is yes. I think that until we can resolve it otherwise, we should look there and look
Yeah.
everywhere.
They seem to, I don't know, warm towards the autistic side of humans.
People who are on the spectrum and people who are have dissociative nature seem to have more of these experiences than others. But as I said earlier, that could be because the others don't talk about it. It's their own
Yeah.
social makeup that prevents them from doing that. So it's a matter of digging in. And this is really why I put up UAP Med, is to have psychologists and professionals engage and argue amongst themselves over what's going on so that we can get answers from people who are qualified to do those studies, do the work.
No, but it was a great convo. I love listening to it. I didn't realize, obviously, that you was an experiencer. It was fascinating.
As I say in my LinkedIn, it informs everything I do. And I've had more than two
Have you?
going on all my life. And it's not every time I go out the door, I look up and see one. It can go 5 or 10 years between. But I'll tell you, when it does come around, it's unambiguous.
Well, they
Every
say,
years.
lightning never strikes twice. Some people do. And it seems like either you're going to go through life and you're never going to witness anything, or if you witness one, you're going to seem to witness more than one, if you understand what I mean. You, like, when you speak to people, they won't just say, oh, it's just the once. They'll say, oh, it'll be like 2 or 3 times, like yourself, like who we were speaking about earlier. That was 2 or 3 times. He's had previous experiences, and it's not always the once. It's always, if somebody's going to, it sounds like if somebody's going to have an experience once in their life, they're more than likely going to have more than one experience.
That seems like it. And I would say that I would qualify experience as being close. Okay. Close attention. That video is close attention. Okay. That isn't a light in the sky seen out across the desert while you were driving from here to LA or something. It's right over his head.
Yeah.
It's close. Okay. And so I would say that people who have close observations often have more than one. And it implies to me that they have the attention of whatever's behind that, and that these incidents are sterile. Okay. They happen. You can project anything you want on them. You can say it was a good thing. You can say you were touched by the hand of God. You can say you were pursued by demons. But the one thing you can't do is get it to stop. It keeps coming and it keeps interacting and it keeps doing things. And a lot of the things that it does are not particularly nice. Again, assessing ongoing interest by the other team, are we?
Yeah.
So, and so what are they interested in? And what is attracting them to this guy? Is it the ability of this video to end up in your hands and to be disseminated widely and to influence observers? It could be anything. And remember, we're dealing with an intelligence, if it is, that couldn't be a million years in advance of us. It would have to be more than that.
Oh, yeah.
That's too close in cosmic time, for
Yeah.
something external. We're not going to run into anything that close to what we are. We're either going to meet things that are very much below us or very much beyond us. I doubt very much we're going to run into anything that's at our level of tech or within 10,000 years of it, or even a
Yeah.
million.
I will say that
Right.
Michael, he did say that since he videoed this, he didn't tell anyone, and he had many negative things start happening. His car started breaking, his phone was hacked. He said 4-wheel drive vehicles were following him. Again, I don't know if any of that's true, but assuming he's credible.
I'm
That's
not
why
sure.
he released the video. He said, actually, he gave me the video because these things were happening. He thought maybe if he released it, it would be like off his chest. He would lose the bad karma.
We might. I don't know how things are in Australia around this subject and whether they have teams that are engaging.
No, there's a huge stigma. He doesn't want to talk about it. He thinks he'll be stigmatized.
Do you think that underneath that is an intelligent government agency that's still paying attention to it, knowing that it might not be?
If there really are 4-wheel drive vehicles following him and his phone is hacked, I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, it's how do you believe these? It's an amazing story. We're talking about non-human intelligence. Here's what looks like a spaceship on a considered credible source. What do we do?
What he said is it came over the top of him and it went about, he said, over the hills, over in front of him. He said it was about 100 kilometers or something. It went up and he thought it was a shooting star. And then it literally stopped at the top of the hills and then just came absolutely just hair back at him. And then just literally just stopped over the top
Just
of
like
him.
you said, Ted, just
I've
stop.
been that guy. I've been that guy. It's not funny.
Yeah.
And when it singles you out, it's very disturbing. And it wouldn't surprise me that others are interested in knowing who's being influenced by these things and trying to be there to collect data of their own when things are going down.
Yeah.
That would be smart.
His previous experience, he said he had an orb. Literally, he was on a boat, wasn't he, Chris? Did he say he was on a boat? And
Yeah,
the orb came up to him.
Yeah, it came out of the water and stopped right
and
next to him.
and it moved through the water. There was no water there.
No, my exposures, they're multiple and they involve several different forms. And that's one thing I've encountered with others too. It's rarely the same thing over and over again. It's a couple of different types of phenomena that they encounter. They may encounter the same one again and again, but they'll encounter other things too.
Yeah.
Prior to the incident in Oakland, I had 3 encounters that involved spherical objects, one that involved a rectangular object observation at a distance over the naval storage facilities there near Richmond, the atomic storage facilities there. And I had a big black sphere come rolling up on me on my deck before I ever started into the UFO thing in Orinda, California. I was up on the ridge there above the freeway and this big black ball come rolling up the skyline and parks right off the front of my deck.
Wow.
This is before I ever got involved with this stuff. So I've seen discs, I've seen spheres, I've seen cylinders.
It's just
I don't
insane how much data there is when you start looking and everyone's like, where's the evidence? And it's okay, look at the Narcap databases. Like we saw over 20 cases there, but you also have many other catalog cases that Dick Haynes has gone through. Yeah, I was just blown away just listening to Dick Haynes. And that was from it was like 2011.
Yeah. He did a new interview. It was released last week he did it with James Blandoli. And I would strongly recommend giving that a listen. He gives me some deference in there, which is really sweet. I really appreciated that. And just between you and the walls, and anybody who's listening, he had a serious health incident earlier this year or late last year. And it's really good to see him.
And then here, I'll just do a final question here. So what would be the ideal outcome of successful coordination between European and US reporting groups, only to try and lead into speaking with Ryan Graves and Baptiste, like you mentioned? But how do you think we could coordinate these?
Oh, again, I think that independence and neutrality is really the way to do it. You create a powerful program wherever you are and you stand it up. And then you create an independent one somewhere else. And then see if there's validation. See if the two of you come to similar conclusions or not. See if you have a minority position on things. It gives you a chance to fact check. My illustration really was that science debates. Those debates should be happening. It's a sign of health. And if we can get science to debate these things seriously and argue about them and come up with explanations and alternative explanations, eventually we're going to get to some answers. And it doesn't have to take that long. But that's the best thing I could see that happens, not only between Europe and the US, but all around the world. We need countries coordinating with each other on this information, working inside their own countries, working with those who they're allied with, and working with the larger groups like us and even at the UN level to contribute to the body of knowledge that helps resolve this very important issue.
Yeah.
Said Ted, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Happy to help. If you could do me a favor when you do this, make sure that where I changed my hats and told you that I was going from AI and Narcap to exposure guy,
Yeah.
please include that. Make sure that's clear.
Yeah, I leave everything in. I only cut out inner
That's-
workings. Like when the dog barks or this time we're talking about it, I'll cut this time out. But I leave everything in.
I think that a video you got there, terribly interesting, and any help I can be there, I'll give you a referral to at least one.
It would be a ton of help. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've basically taken it as far as we can. At this point, I want to put it public, and this will actually be the public release.
No, it's great.
So yeah, we'll play this. This will be the release of the video. So I'd like people in the audience actually to chime up. Like we said, we're all in this just to figure it out. And I think it's the biggest question possibly answer.
It's one of the biggest ones we need.
You're going to spend your life on some other, whatever it is. I'm going to worry about click-through rates on a Twitter website, whatever it is. Or are you going to research non-human intelligence on Earth? And it seems like
Yeah,
there is a ton of evidence.
there's a couple of ways to look at that. I personally considered it a terrible burden. I didn't want to do this, and I haven't enjoyed it. It's not been the most fun I've ever had, walking this tightrope and carrying this information in me while I'm trying to improve the environment outside of me on the subject. There's probably a million things I could have been doing other than this, but I don't think there's much more important than this. Global warming, sure, wars and famines and disease and all that. This is existential too, and we need to get it resolved. And I can't be much help as an immunologist, but I can certainly help with this.
Brilliant.
Okay. Thanks, Ted. Thanks for
Thank you,
being here.
Ted.
Have a great day.
Keep in time.